the flash was so small and so fast, the conscious mind didn't pick it up. The subconscious mind picks everything up, and it was putting the thought into the subconscious, Coke, Coke, Coke. And the sales of Coke went up as a result of that. They would put other little subliminals in, like, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty, to do the same. And when you look at the advertisements that you see all around you in newspapers and television, the subliminals manipulating the subconscious are enormous. Here's an example. About 5% apparently of people pick this up. So have a look. There is a subliminal message which, when it's pointed out, is crystal clear in the picture you're seeing. And like I say, according to the research, about 5% of people see this, and the others don't. If you haven't seen it, look at the two plants on the left. Go down to the bottom half and you'll see that they make an S in the background. A lot of these subliminals are put in the background of advertisements because people tend to concentrate on the subject, but in the background it kind of passes us by. That's good because it goes into the subconscious mind. If you look, it's an S, and then you look at the same level between the two middle plants, you'll see an E, and then there's the X on the other side. And sexual subliminals are used a great deal. Here's an advertisement which I looked at, and they said, yeah, just an advertisement, yeah, it's a guy, yeah, so what's in there? See if you can see the subliminal in that, because although it's kind of quite overtly sexual, the advert in general, it's actually a lot more blatant than that when you see the subliminal. What you do, if you haven't seen it, most people don't, I understand, go along the top of the jeans at on the waist, just to the left of the center of the chest, and then follow up the shading. And it's very clearly a willy. Now, you'll see these, until I started researching this, I didn't realize how blatant it was. You'll see things like that in the most innocuous of advertisements, like for chocolate cake and soft drinks and all this stuff. And again, this is one that actually was very blatant. This is for chicken McNuggets at McDonald's. I mean, have you ever seen anything on a chicken that looked like that? And when it was pointed out, they said, oh no, we're a family company. Yeah, all right. Now the reason that there's so many sexual subliminals put in advertisements is this. This is the basis on which they do it. We are led to believe we live in a sexually open society. We don't. We live in a sexually suppressed society. And we're in denial of so many things. Not just sexual things, we're in denial of many things that we don't want to face. What they do is, with subliminals, is manipulate that. They use the sexual subliminals to attract you on a subconscious level to the advertisement, although the conscious mind has no idea why it's attracted. And the conscious mind, which is in denial of sexuality, in denial of many other emotions that we feel, it shuts out what it's looking at. And so they have the wonderful benefit and bonus of attracting people to the advertisement on a subconscious level, while the conscious mind is not seeing what is attracting them to it. So this is what they use it all the time. And our subconscious mind is being programmed with messages and instructions and hypnotic implants all day, every day. From what I've read about like print advertising in newspapers and magazines, particularly in newspapers, they're designed to be seen, looked at for about 1 second. So what are they doing? Are they going to sell me anything in words in the advert in a second? Not the idea. The idea is to implant in that second the subliminal message And it literally is a hypnotic key, which then is designed to be triggered when you're walking down the supermarket and you see that product, and then the trigger comes and you buy the product. That's how it's based, what it's based on. And this, of course, doesn't just happen when they're trying to sell you a chocolate cake or a bottle of gin. It happens in political advertising, in political statements, and in the media in general, in terms of manipulating our subconscious reality of 9/11, the war on terrorism, invading Iraq. It's going on all the time. You might remember a few years ago when Georgie Bush, Boy George, was going against Al Gore. An anti-Gore advertisement by the Bush camp was found to have this subliminal in it, where rats came up when they were making a very anti-statement about Al Gore. Unfortunately, it was very crassly done compared with how it normally is, and you only had to slow down the tape very slightly to see the rats. It's much more subtle most of the time, but this is just an example of how it's done. I remember even further back, there was a time when Francois Mitterrand, the president of France, was going for a re-election, and people saw a subliminal involving him in the opening titles of the national news on one of their channels. Again, it's all about subconscious implantation. Here's an example of that. There's a very good book called The Age of Manipulation. It's one of many good books written by a man called Wilson Bryan Key, who's pretty much one of the world's best researchers and most knowledgeable writers on subliminal manipulation of the subconscious. And he points this out in his book about Colonel Gaddafi. Years ago, when they were in America trying to demonize Gaddafi, they had his front page cover picture on Time magazine, Time Warner, massive Illuminati company, and in the face they had planted subliminally sex on the forehead, attract into the picture, and then kill on the side of the face to plant a very negative subconscious thought about Gaddafi. And they do this with other people as well. And these, let me add, are the very people who have told us what happened on 9/11, who did it, why it was done, and what should happen as a result. Interestingly, during the Iraq War, they introduced this massive manipulative con of having reporters travel with the troops during the Iraqi war. And what did they call them? And this word came out of the Pentagon. They decided on it. They called them embedded reporters, or embeds. Guess what they call these subliminal messages and implants in advertisements like the ones I've been showing you? They call them in the trade embeds. How appropriate. And there's no way that the Pentagon came up with that term for the reporters by accident. What were those embedded reporters? They were subliminal embeds, because they were traveling with the troops, they were dependent on the troops, they got all their information from the troops basically, and yet they were standing there apparently reporting the war as a journalist, but they were in fact front people for the official version of what was happening in that war. And this is, I would strongly suggest, one of the reasons that life got very unpleasant and very dangerous for so many reporters trying to report the war that weren't embedded, to make sure that there were fewer and fewer who would put their lives at risk in the wars of conquest that are still to come. So again, subliminals are used to manipulate us and give us a subconscious image of reality all the time. I mean, here's Tony Blair. This man, along with Bush, and more importantly those that control them and dictate to them in terms of policy and action, he has just brought about a war. Well, it's not really a war, you need two sides in a war. Brought about an invasion that cost the lives of 7,000, at least, independent count, 7,000 Iraqi civilians